Hello and welcome. One question I get asked most often is, how do you weave such neat, clean selvages? One side sometimes when you're weaving might be a little funkier than the other. How do you fix that? Or how do you keep weaving and do 10 yards and all the selvages look good? Well, I'm going to share a few tips with you. I've done this in some other recordings, but let's take a look at it again and maybe some new fresh eyes. So let's start with a few tips. Let's take a look at the fabric that I'm weaving on this loom. This yarn happens to be 6'2" cotton. I have it set at 18 ends per inch, and I think this might be about a 10-yard warp. I'm almost to the end of the warp. I think I have another 1.5 yards left. I just tensioned it up, which is one thing you want to do. You want to make sure when you're doing your selvages that your warp is fairly tight. So right now it's tight, not too tight. One of the things too is you want to be consistent when you advance the warp. So each time that you tension it, it's about the same. Takes a little practice, a little time, and also depending on the type of yarn that you're using. So let's take a first look at how I'm going to basically throw the shuttle. The bobbin is fairly full right now, so I lift the treadle. I'm going to throw the shuttle across, and I am going to beat with an open shed, and then I'm going to close the shuttle and go back. I'm going to go the other direction again. I'm going to press the treadles. I'm going to throw across. Now you notice it's at an angle. I beat it, and then I release it. Now one thing I didn't do is I'm not touching my selvages. I didn't tug at it or anything like that. I'm allowing the yarn to just go ahead and find its place where it belongs. So let me go back the other way again. Cross, open, close, press it open, and close. Now another little trick if you're a new weaver, in this particular design, I have the dark brown on the edges, and I was doing a pattern. I'm also weaving with something dark, so if it's new for you, if you weave with a yarn that the warp is similar to the same color as the edge, if you do have a little problem here and then, it's not going to show as much. So right now I'm going to also practice with the rhythm and get used to it. The other thing too, this particular warp isn't that wide. It's just about the width of my hips, which is a good way to practice. So what you could do is put on some yardage and don't look really all the time at the selvages. Just get into the habit of throwing the shuttle back and forth. Now something that happens with sometimes, and it happened with me, is that sometimes one side is a little funkier than the other. Something a weaver told me, I don't know where it was if I'm sitting here, maybe if I'm having trouble on this side, to shift your body over a little bit to the side that you're having some problems with, or to the whatever side it is. The reason, well, I'm thinking of sometimes if you're right-handed like I am, maybe I'm throwing a little harder on one side and not as hard on the other side. What happens though over time, as you're weaving, where you're sitting, you're throwing the shuttle about the same each time. I'm going to go a little bit farther here. Now right now the bobbin is still fairly full, and what I'm doing now is I'm watching to see how close I'm getting to the reed. The other thing that sometimes could be a problem is the closer you get to the reed, then it's actually a little bit of drawing. Some things are happening right now. The width here is different than it is here. It's a little bit wider, and that could also cause some problems when you're advancing. So I'm going to advance right now. My other suggestion is try not to go too close to the reed. So I'm going to stop now. I'm going to advance the fabric. And again, I'm going to have it the same tension as I did before. If I went too close, when I started back down here, on the edges, sometimes there's a funky gap going on. Now I'm going to continue weaving, again, throwing the shuttle. Now I'm going to keep weaving. Pause the camera for a moment because I want to show you also what's going to happen as this bobbin gets lighter and lighter. Right now it's pretty heavy, so I'm actually listening to it and I'm feeling. I can feel that it's heavier, and I can also listen. So you're going to use some other senses that you don't really think about. You think of your sense of hearing, and as the bobbin gets lighter and lighter, it's going to sound differently, and it's going to roll off your bobbin differently. And you're going to have to do maybe something to help that out. So we're going to pause here, going to pick up when this bobbin is a little lighter. Okay, now the bobbin is a little lighter. You can even see that I'm running out of yarn right now. And I'm going to weave a little bit. I want you to listen. I'm not sure if you would hear any difference, but I hear a difference. Now, the other thing that happens, it's not rolling off the same, so it might come off a little faster. So sometimes I put a little break on the bobbin, and I'll show you what I'm going to do. I take it across, and sometimes I might need to kind of just touch this here to give it a little extra pull, perhaps. I can beat that right. Just a little extra pull on this side. I'm going to try to do it on the other side. It's kind of hard to do it. Now, I actually I'm holding the bobbin, beating it. Let me go back the other direction again. So sometimes I might need to, it's kind of do it slow, it's hard to do it slow motion. Let's see if I can do it with, yeah, there we go. So right now, again, I'm holding that and just kind of giving it a little extra tug as I'm going back and forth. And it's getting lighter and lighter. So I could also just kind of tug a little bit more. Now I'm on the last one. And now we do the magic. How do we add the other one? Now this is another suggestion when you're advanced. Right now I'm running out of yarn. I'm not going to advance the loom. I'd like to make sure that I have enough that I can. I'm going to tuck it through here. And you can bring it over the top or put it on the bottom, whichever works for you. I'm going to nip it off in a minute here. So I changed the bobbin. Of course, it's also rolling out the bottom. And now I'm going to go across, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap it just a little bit, and I'm going to beat it a little bit. I'm going to keep weaving now before I advance it. Sometimes if you advance it and then change the yarn, sometimes then that particular shot that you went across shows up more. Now what I normally do now is, now that I did a couple of shots, I kind of tug on that, pull it. So now it starts to kind of hide itself in there. It's overlapping about an inch or an inch and a half near the edge. Now this time it's in the purple. Sometimes I like to keep it closer to the edge. So I'll keep weaving a little bit. The other thing about doing that now is that I don't have to go back and trim all of those later. I like to trim them as I go. One less thing to do later on, and you don't have to feed them back through. Now it's a little hard to see in the camera, but I just tensioned it, and I started weaving, and I noticed that it was a little looser than I was weaving before. So I knew that the tension wasn't the same. So I just clicked it one more to get the tension back. So sometimes it's getting familiar with the adjustments on your loom. And again, for some reason, my left side, probably because I'm right-handed, seems always to be a little more funkier than my right side. The right side is usually nice and neat, and sometimes I do still have issues. Now this is a plain weave or a tabby weave, which is one good place to practice on, actually. You can do twills and other things, but of course with a twill, if you're not using a floating selvage, sometimes it might be a little wavy, but again, if you've seen some other videos of mine, I call those organic selvages. Okay, something else some weavers use, and I have used it in the past when I did some rug weaving, and I also did some draw loom weaving, is a temple. Now in this case, what the width up here is a little bit more than 18 inches, and down here I have it just about at 18. Because this is the temple that I have that I could show you on this. And what happens is you basically spread out your yarn, and there's little prongs on here. You have to be really careful, or you can poke yourself and start bleeding. So what you do is you use the temple to keep it wide, And some people, that really helps with your selvages. Now with the temple though, you weave maybe, not much more than maybe an inch, maybe a little bit more. And then what you do is you do need to advance this and take it out. Now I could weave a little bit farther. You take it out, and then you put those little prongs right on the edge. And then you do the same thing on the other side. And then you press this back down and you lock that in place, and then you keep weaving. So that's another way if you're struggling with your selvages. Perhaps you want to try a temple. It also eliminates as much draw in. As you can see, while I was weaving, gotta pick up my different tape measures all over the place here. Like I said, it's about 18 inches, and by the time I get down to about here, it's a little less than 17 inches wide. So it goes from about 18 to 17, and then after this particular product is washed, it's probably gonna go down to about 16 inches. So I lose about 2 inches. So that's another device you could use to help with your selvages and also to have less draw-in in your weaving. Now, wasn't that easy? Well, of course, I forgot to add into this situation that I've been weaving for over 30 years. And a lot of what I do is muscle memory. So first of all, I do suggest that you put on several warps and just start weaving. Try not to worry too much about the selvages, and just practice, practice, practice. And everything will get better in time.